Hey guys, it's Kalia with Southern Regime. Today we are finally back with Bryan. It's been about a year since our last interview with the process that I actually call discharging his mortgage, but it's actually called a reconveyance. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to answer some of the questions you had in the previous video, as well as his process that he's actually done this process again a little bit faster with a different approach. So we're going to talk about that as well. Bryan, how are you?
I'm doing great, sister. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm finally
I'm
glad to have you back. That was
glad to
a
be back.
really popular video. I had a lot of questions, but I do appreciate you going in the comments and trying to answer as many questions as
Oh,
possible.
certainly, certainly. Like I say, I am a consumer of YouTube, so I know how it feels when you hear things and you have questions you just won't answer, or you want to be pointed in the right direction, right? So I get it.
So, as I mentioned, you did this process once and you've recently done this process again, but you've
Yes, ma'am.
taken a different approach as far as to the reconveyance. So can you share that with us?
Well, yeah, the first time, was a lot of just really trying to figure things out, and it took the longest because I had about 18 months to really just sit back and ponder over it based on the understanding that I had as a real estate investor on these documents. So when I went through it the second time, I was more familiar with particularly the UCC. And through the UCC, it governs commerce. And there's a section in there that covers sales. There's a section in there that covers negotiable instruments. So when you understand these documents and what they are, you can go to these sections of the code to see the instructions on how they're used and how they're governed and what they really mean. So incorporating that during the second time was a lot faster. And when I was going for the mortgage exchange with the lender, I was already prepared on what to look for, after closing to show me that something fishy was going on, right? So immediately once we closed, I began to take action. A gentleman always gives notice. And I gave them notice, of the issue and gave them the opportunity to correct their flaws. And after a certain amount of time, I also tendered payment. I remained in honor throughout the process. That's very important. I continued to tender payment and I gave them a specific timeline. And due to that specific timeline, which was about 90 days, for them to correct their flaws and go ahead and get things right. Once they didn't do that, I began to implement the next process of defaulting them. Okay. And then that was a series of a few more UCC laws, we can get into here shortly as well.
So let me ask you this, because one of the questions in the previous interview was asking if this process is possible, what's like preventing somebody from continually doing this? So in your second time doing this, was that your primary residence or do you do
Oh,
rental property? No?
good question. Good question. No, it wasn't my primary. This second time it was through a LLC that I owned and controlled, and the property was inside the LLC. Okay. And with this situation, I also had what you call a little bit of creative real estate investment because during closing, I was actually the buyer and the seller at closing. Okay. So that also played a big part in the being able to move so well and smooth because I'm controlling both sides of the negotiation.
Okay, I have another question because one of the other questions from the previous interview asked, can you do this process if you have a trust?
Trusts are very special. Okay. You you can, but if anything, you want to have the property end up in the trust, all right? You don't want to start off with the trust because a lot of times they're not going to want to deal with the trust. They're going to want you to pull it out the trust, all right, or and go with an LLC or even do a PG on it. You even have some loans such as what they call DCSR loans is what I end up doing with the second process where it's not so much a credit score, but they want like a decent, I think it's like 680 basic, but it's more so on the cash flow that the property can generate for
Okay.
you to be qualified for the loan as a second investment property.
So, I know I've been asked a ton, like since the first interview, like, hey, how do I contact this person? I want to know more. Like, what can I read? Tell me what books. So you finally put something together for the public. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Okay. After popular demand, I've been having so many people, like she say, in the comments and in my comments, in my inbox, my email, social media, and even those that took the time to invest in themselves and book a consultation where they could really get my undivided time. I have put together an actual course that I'm going to be dropping around the 1st of next month. I'm doing the webinar on the 30th of this month. So you can get an
Wait,
overview of what's actually going to be in the course.
what
Mhm.
say what month? Because by the time people see this, we don't know.
Okay, we're in what this is what are April.
Yeah,
I'm so lost to the sauce. So we're in April right now. What is this, the 19th? What is
that I
today?
don't know. The 20th.
The 20th. Okay, I was close. It's the 20th. So in 10 days, I'll be doing the webinar. And then that's going to be on a Sunday at 6 p.m., I believe. And then the following Friday, I will be dropping the course. And for those who will actually take the time out to, register for the webinar, you will receive a special discount offer for the actual purchase of the course once it's released. Okay. You can go to any of my social medias, find my link tree to get, to book your registration, get your spot secured and everything, and also see a preview of, some of the other courses that I'm going to be offering. A lot of the content that I do deliver, I try to deliver the stuff that like people are in the comments, the questions you're asking, the stuff that I wanted to see and be pointed in a direction. Because some of us don't need, our hands held. We just want to be, hey, show me the source, and I can kind of take it from there. So that's how my YouTube is kind of set up, where I'm giving you a bunch of information, and if you can see where I'm going with the information, you can kind of put, two and two together and show you, how to get out of some stuff legally, because a lot of this stuff is just fraud. Pinpoint blank, it's fraud.
Hey guys, this is Kalia with Southern Regime. If you're a small business owner and you are in need of funding for your business, we have the perfect program for you. We're also going to throw in a pretty big bonus of fixing your personal credit for free. Now, why are we doing that? One, because if you are a newer business, your personal profile might come into play. We want to make sure your personal and your business profile are really strong. So if your business needs an additional $50,000, $100,000, maybe $200,000, this is going to be an ideal program for you. Hit the link in the bio. And I would say, you mentioned it last time, like fraud does not expire. So as soon as you find that fraud, you can go
Aware.
ahead and address it because
Yes,
it's
you
still
can.
relevant. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So changing directions a little bit. I know we are talking about mortgages, but I know you've also gotten into Turo and you've used the consumer laws and some other laws effectively in that space. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Couple of years. It's been about 2 years now. I had what I ended up doing was leveraging my credit. Now a lot of people at the time, it was just a myth, a thing about purchasing a car with no money down. It's just such a behemoth to speak. Well, it's not really that hard. See, the first thing you people got to understand is the banks are the ones who's actually right, the creditors in these transactions. The dealer are just a third party. So when you go to them directly, they're trying to get themselves the best deal. So they typically, what they do is what they call shotgun your credit profile out for lenders. But if you already bank with somebody, preferably credit unions always is typically the best. You can go to your bank first and get approved. That way you only get that one inquiry if
Right.
they decide to give you an inquiry. And sometimes certain banks, you can leverage that one inquiry and get qualified for multiple
Yeah.
products, such as maybe the credit cards. You see what I'm saying? And then once you get that pre-approval, some lenders, they give you a little check and tell you to go pay for it, or they'll just tell you to go find the car, or they'll tell you their network of dealerships that they deal with, and just go to that dealership and give them this document showing that you already pre-approved, and they'll send in the buyer's order to the bank and take care of it. No money down. The bank is never going to ask you, or require you, I should say, to put down a down payment.
Where
Okay.
does that
You
down
can
payment go?
well depends, let's say, on who's requiring it. Like I say, the banks is not going to require that. So if it's you at the dealership and they're requiring that, who's to say, right? If the bank ain't requiring, where does it go? I know. One of them tell to you where is the money going, right? So especially if it's not required. Now we have the idea that what By me putting, let's say the car is 10 grand, right? By me putting 5 grand down on the car, I only owe $5,000, right? So that's the ideology where you paid half. Well, it wasn't required though.
Yeah.
It's not required, but if it's financed, it's not required. A down payment is not required. It's financed. It's like bringing sand to the beach. You went to the bank to get money to purchase something. Why would they tell you to bring money? It doesn't make sense, right? That's the theory behind it. But once you get approved by your bank, you don't need no down payment and you're good to go. And that's what I did 8 times that 1 year. I went and grabbed 8 brand new vehicles with no money down, and half of those vehicles I actually paid for. The other half, I actually decided to invoke my consumer rights, and somebody didn't pay it all for from the day I walked off the lot because I was exercising credit. Credit is the right granted by a creditor to incur debt and to defer its payment, right? Where I was incurring debt. I didn't receive anything of tangible intrinsic value from the bank for me to be required to pay them back, especially not in no Federal Reserve notes. So how can they be requiring me to pay them something that they never gave me? If they made some magical numbers, ones and zeros appear on the computer screen and told me that I had credit, and I exchanged a piece of paper that they call negotiable instrument, right? It's a commercial piece of paper. If they took that in, why is that not good for anything else? Right. But we don't know to think like this because it's the system that they have. So a few of those cars, of course, they repo. I filed lawsuits. Some of them I had to dismiss because I didn't file them properly. So I slowed down instead of trying to file so many at once. And I just filed one at a time. And the biggest one I did was against Wells Fargo. I filed it in Wells Fargo. I had 2 vehicles with them that I came through and used my consumer credit and paid no money down at closing, and I left, and they kept sending me these statements with these positive balances. I couldn't tell if they was debits or credits, because financial accounting, you have to be disclosed whether this is the debit or credit. It appeared to be a positive balance, so I assumed that it was a credit, right? So I'm looking, maybe I thought it was a check or something, but they're trying to tell me it was a debt. I said, well, why didn't it appear as a debit or credit? Something to let me know that this was something they was expecting to receive, but they didn't have that type of disclosure. So these are the types of things that's involved with TILA, right? So TILA
TILA is the Truth in Lending Act. Some people may not know the abbreviation. Go ahead.
That is the Truth in Lending Act. So the Truth in Lending Act, you have to be disclosed clear, inconspicuously in a form that you may keep on what's going on with these transactions. Okay. So if I'm giving them what's called a negotiable instrument, and on my documents it's saying it's a promise to pay, well, that's not an order to pay, it's a promise to pay. And then it has a maturity date. But then they turn around and want to try to default us when we miss I think it's about 90 days worth of payments. They're trying to default you, but you have a maturity date that's probably 5 or 6, 7 years. That's kind of weird, right? But when we don't challenge these things, they continue to move forward with it, right? So understanding this is where I got back with Wells Fargo, and I brought this up and ended up going to a federal case against them. And the federal case lasted for about a year. I had to do a little amending my complaint and learning about how to really state a claim upon which relief can be granted. And I was able to do that pretty well and cause the, let's say, the representation of the bank to want to go ahead and settle. And I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement upon that settlement. And that was just completed about a month ago.
I think one of the really important things you mentioned was that it's a constant learning process, right?
Yes,
so
yes,
we're never going to know everything to do in those situations. Is constantly reading, is constantly researching, so that you're prepared for that next round. And like you said, you had to do some amendments, so maybe you had to make a couple of changes here or there as you're learning that process, but you can still be successful and get to where you want to get. But you need to be flexible in your knowledge and taking in as much as possible. So yeah, that's great.
Yes, and through that experience, I was able to create a course on that as well. So you could really state a claim upon which relief can be granted. And I was able to do that because what I did was I used my social media to reach out to people to send me their contracts so I could actually see the consistency of these violations in various states. And it's all standard, man. I mean, some of these contracts, you can just type in the code at the bottom of the contract and you can pull up the template. So it's just a copy and paste type of situation. And one of the key things I will tell everybody, holder in due course rule. If you understand that is it's an undeniable fact of a contract. especially with these retail installment contracts, as well as a mortgage. But I did 3 videos on my channel based on this rule. Okay, so I strongly encourage people to study that and look at that, and you'll be surprised on how clear the rule violation of that is and what the penalty is for various states. You can take it outside of the FDC rule, and you can apply it to the state for unfair deceptive practices and act, whatever state you're in, and see what the penalty is for that. Some states is triple the amount. I name my course TILA 2 times because we focus on 2 times the amount of finance, right? But the jewel behind my course is I show you that if you go look at your state, there's some states where you can get 3 times. So 3 times plus the 2, then you can also sue for liquid balances, putting it together and being able to articulate it correctly so that these people can understand what you're saying.
So you did mention your channel, so definitely share your social media so people know where to find you. And I'll tag it at the bottom.
Oh, most definitely. Well, we know it's Stand Strong on YouTube. All right. Then on Instagram, we're Stand Strong with no vowels. It begins with an underscore and it ends with an underscore. All right. A lot of people didn't know what vowels was. And I'm sorry. If you don't know what vowels is, please go do some Google search before you reach out to me.
All right. So let's say somebody is just starting this process. Can you just name like 1 or 2 jewels of things that they definitely need to do?
Oh man, that is a good question considering how many rabbit holes I've been in, I'm still in. Most importantly, just I want to say contract, understanding contract law, because that's it's everything in America. The society, the world that we live is what it governs, and understanding what that is. That's simple elements of a contract. Just study that first. That way, when you okay, and then I would just start with right there.
Okay, so just definitely start to dive into contract law, researching books, content.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Case laws too. Any type of situation you may be having, you be going through. You'll be surprised if you type that up in Google and just put cases. You'll be surprised what comes up when you start reading these cases and these case laws they refer to. You can see how codes and laws are applied and how they're supposed to be understood in cases that have won and in cases that have lost. So that's always a good advantage point.
The sound was breaking up a little bit. Could you repeat that?
Okay. Case law, looking up case law was always good because it gives you the opportunity to see how laws and codes are actually applied, where they have worked and where they have failed, to give you a good vantage point on where, to have a good perspective.
All right. Well, man, this was extremely informative. Thank you so much for coming back. Like I said,
Always.
It was a highly
Gratitude.
viewed video. There were hundreds of people that had questions. Although, like I said, I know you were down there in the comments answering
I'm in the
questions.
comments. I'm in the comment section,
But
y'all. I'm in the comment
yes.
section.
So if any of you guys have questions, you want to know more about his upcoming course, I will share all his contact information in the link below. Like you said, he's on YouTube, he's on Instagram, so he's very findable. I know some of y'all like, I don't know where he is. I will share all the information. You can locate him if you have questions. But thanks again, Bryan.
All right. Peace and prosperity.